Hello and welcome to the Who You Know Show, a student-led show debating which is more important in succeeding in the film and television industry, who you know or what you know. This week we are so lucky to be interviewing the lovely Andrew Parker.
What?
So, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on our show. For anyone who doesn't know who you are, would you like to give a little intro to yourself? So, what do you do?
What do I do? Good question. At the moment, now I am the co-programme leader for the film and television production degree at the University of Hertfordshire, and this is a degree course aimed to get people working in film and television if they so wish upon graduation. So that's the idea of the course, to turn people out as all-rounders. So I am, yes, responsible for that.
So your entrance into the film and TV industry started with acting?
It did.
When did you start? So you went training?
I did. After university, I got a great job in a bank.
What did you study at university?
I studied medieval English history and landscape archaeology.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very important in filmmaking. Very important. And I don't think I knew that people could act for a living at that point. I think you just had to get a proper job. And I went on this thing that's called the milk round. That's not where you actually go delivering milk. It's called the milk round, where employers would come round to the university. And I got interviewed and offered jobs at two different banks, Lloyds Bank and NatWest. And I took the job at Lloyds Bank thinking that that would give me all the fulfilment I needed. Because I didn't know you could do acting. I really didn't think that acting would be possible. Really? But I didn't. I left the bank after about a year and I did another job. And in the end, I decided I'd start applying to drama schools in London. Yeah. So I did that and I ended up at a place called Mountview where I studied a postgraduate course in acting.
Oh, right. So were you always interested in acting, like, as a child then?
Oh, yeah. I think always been very excited by performance.
Yeah.
I was always making my toys have adventures and do voices and all that sort of behind the sofa stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
My parents even bought me a ventriloquist doll. I think that was to shut me up, or they preferred talking to it rather than to me. I don't know. And yeah, so I'd always been interested in writing and performing and putting on shows and creating things like that.
So it's like your passion in your free time, basically.
I think it was more of an obsession.
Obsession, yeah.
I think you become obsessed with film too, and things like that, more than a passion.
Was it more drama or comedy heavy, or what about acting?
Strangely enough, I remember when we finally got to drama school and the tutors all went around the room and said, what sort of roles do you see yourself playing? And of course we all answered, James Bond, of course. But no, my career didn't go that way. I did end up, I have been attracted to comedy. Yeah. I think if you find things funny in life, if you are able to find things funny, then yeah, you're always going to be attracted to comedy. And I think when you're a younger person, it's always trying to subvert everything. So you try and subvert authority, you try and have a laugh at the norm. You start by doing impressions of your teachers at school, don't you? Yeah. In the hope that they don't catch you. And then you do the same thing with your tutors at college, which is something I would never, ever recommend that you do. Just saying that, I'm just going to make that clear. Right. None of this taking them out. But I would do all of that sort of thing. Yeah. And so I got drawn a lot to comedy. And I started writing lots of comedy, and I even started doing bits of stand-up for comedy as well. Really? So it was always, I don't know, finding a funny spin on things is something that I've always enjoyed. Oh, okay.
Is there anywhere we can find these stand-ups?
Yeah, the stand-ups.
There's I don't think you can find the early stand-up stuff, thank God. It was awful. There might be some sketch stuff and things like that, but most of this was live originally, so this would be live in London and elsewhere, so there isn't really a useful record of it. But that's how it began, and I started putting on my own shows on the London Fringe and then eventually the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, so moving into producing shows, trying to work out how to sell tickets, how to feed ourselves, how to grab attention, how to get our own TV show. That's how it kind of goes, and it snowballed like that.
Do you find comedy like quite daunting? Because obviously it's quite
very subjective.
To get it right, yeah.
Not really. I think if you've got the bug, if it's in you and you think you're going to go out there and be funny, then you want to do it. Yeah. It's, people often say, oh, how can you do stand-up or how can you present? It's going, well, it's because I want to. Yeah. It's like people who want to play football or play sport, or they really want to be out there. Whereas the thought for me of being out in a cold, muddy field in February on a sort of Saturday afternoon, it's lunacy, and I wouldn't do it. But I think if you've got the bug, if you've really got something that you want to do, Then, particularly before you have the LCEs, that's life-changing events, having babies and families and things like that, you go for it. You just go out there and you go all out for that. And that's what I did.
Oh,
I was certainly starting off on live before television.
Yeah. So you mentioned your TV show.
Yes.
So Pets, late night.
Oh, you
is
found
it
that?
Channel 4?
Yeah, it was. It was a late night Channel 4
I watched
show,
your
yes.
behind the scenes of the making of Pets.
I'm surprised you found that. Well done.
Yeah. You
That's
have, you
good
have an IMDb
researchers.
page.
That's true, yes.
Yeah.
Pets began because I'd worked for a few years. I'd worked as an actor in TV,
Yeah.
and I wasn't making enough money. And then I got the opportunity to work as a producer, an on-air promotions producer for a TV channel. And that meant I got control of various creative projects that I could shoot, edit. And it was, again, a lot of it was short-form comedy type stuff. And we did a Christmas... we wrote this, a friend of mine and I wrote this thing with puppets to do with Christmas.
Yeah.
And in Poland, the traditional Christmas dish is a carp, quite a large fish. And it's still, to this day, it's not unusual to keep the thing fresh. You buy it alive and you keep it in the bath for a couple of days till Christmas Eve, which is when Polish people have the carp.
Yeah.
And we were trying to work out, well, we're doing this stuff for a Polish channel, and we thought, what would be the most ridiculous thing we could do? It would be a carp talking about their plans for after Christmas. So the British version of that would be a turkey. You know, it's an old joke, really.
Yeah.
Turkey, what your plans for the new year, sort of thing. So we did. So we wrote this whole load of, and it just got more and more surreal. So we had, so they're in water in a bath, but they're throwing messages in bottles out of the bath to try and be rescued. And of course, the bottle just smashes. And it was great because we got a fantastic designer in. We built all these lovely sets and props and things, and so it was a nice, full-on production. And that made us think, we'd like to do more of this.
Yeah.
And that's what led to this filthy, very low budget, unfortunately, but a filthy late night
I thought it
puppet
looked
show.
all right. It was kind of the vibe of the show, to be quite...
The vibe of the show was pretty unpleasant. It was just ranting. You know, we wrote it as a, again, it's that, you know, I wrote an episode was based purely on the fact that I was living next door to a really noisy neighbour.
Right,
Who'd
yeah.
come home and have sex really loudly on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So that would get to the point where I'd just do a round of applause at the end. And if I'd been able to reach round, I'd have done like in, you know, gymnastics, I'd have done the scoring through the window with like, because it was like, shut up!
Yeah.
And it got me so angry that I ended up writing, but I write a lot from anger.
Yeah.
I find anger funny because it's first world problems, isn't it? We're all very privileged. We shouldn't get upset at noisy neighbours, but I will never live next to a noisy neighbour again.
So is that what most of the show is based on, your experiences with?
Most of the show is personal experience, yeah. The good thing about puppets is, can I say this word? You can you can turn them into people.
Yeah.
Right? So you take an inanimate object and you make it human. Now, if you take a couple of dogs as puppets, you can make them say the most outrageous things without necessarily being too offensive. Because they're just puppets, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're not. It's not me.
Yeah.
But they were. But one of the puppets was me. It was definitely my personality.
Trevor, yeah.
No, I played Trevor, but the actual personality of
which
mine
one?
was more like the other one, the Scottish one, the Hamish.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say...
Whereas the guy I worked with was more like Trevor. He was kind of like that. And whereas I was much more, think, you know, I'm going to think about this problem for a long time and have a little lie down about it. So we have these two contrasting characters. One who's goes on a flight of fancy, and the other one who just wants to hump the furniture.
Yeah.
As dogs do. But that made it quite a funny contrast. So you, like in life, you can have two different views. You can have the kind of informed view.
Yeah.
I'm going to go blah, 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 blah. Or the other person who just goes, I'll get lost.
Yeah.
And brings it down to a... So that device worked well. It's a good comedy device. You see it an awful lot. From Laurel and Hardy onwards. It's the dumb and dumber.
Yeah.
So you set one character up, you think, oh my goodness me, what an idiot. And then you bring in another one who's even more irritating and stupid. And that's how I see life. Which is a bit scary, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Also, being in that industry for a long time, would you say, like, I don't know how to form this question, but back to who you know or what you know, does it boil down to who you know more than what you know?
It comes down to building connections. When I started, I had no family in... Oh, no, that's not true. I discovered I had a great uncle who'd played on the music halls in about 1900. He played a tramp with a stick, found some photos. He was also an amateur boxer, so did boxing in the
Multi-talented.
East End. Yeah.
Wow.
That's it. That's my only showbiz connection. However, his being dead for a number of decades made it quite difficult for him to be
Get you in
terribly useful.
Yeah.
So everything I did was on the basis of creating buzz and energy with the group of people I was with. Right? So I am a firm believer that it's what you know, and what you apply.
Yeah.
To get to the top echelon, if you want to have a stellar career, then I suppose you might say it comes down more to who you know. But it's luck. If you get in front of the right person, if you get in front of that person who needs your idea on that day, then it can still happen.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of producers and directors, directors of photography, actors, or plenty of people out there who've done it on their own merit and have had the luck then that takes them onwards. That said, we all know that nepotism can play a part. You do see it a lot in acting. You will see people with a particular surname doing well. The truth is, the advantage for them there is that they can get to the auditions that other people don't see. But I think this is more to do with acting than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't think it affects other careers within the industry as much. I mean, yes, of course it still can. If you've got a parent who's a famous director and can get you great people to work with, and you're making your first film after university, and if you can have an A-lister in it, because your dad's pulled a few strings.
Massive,
Now, come on, people are going to watch that film.
Yeah.
So there, you can see it's an advantage. But I don't think overall that it applies quite so much. To me, it's about going out there, being yourself, being disciplined, being professional.
The hard work.
You will get. The harder you work, the more successful you will be. There is no doubt in my mind. Which is why I believe in education and training. Obviously, otherwise it would be a bit silly. Yes, why would we bother? Why would any of us bother? Because we wouldn't get anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So for Pets, how did that come about? Like to get the show.
To get the show commissioned, what we did, it was comparatively early days of the web. Once we'll go back, it's black and white.
So what year is this about?
Pets, I think,
So
was early
2000,
2000s,
yeah.
2001,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay, yeah.
So my friend and I, we were early users of the internet when you had something called a 14400 card, and you would turn your computer on and a picture would go, gadung. Go make a cup of tea. Gadung. Gadung. It would go like this. Gadung. And eventually, the full screen, you'd get a picture off the internet on this 14,400 bits, tiny card. But we thought, no, we're going to exploit this. We reckon that there's a future in this internet thing. And what we did was we shot a pilot of our show with various different other people, pulled in lots of favours, and we put it on a website. And then we started emailing people, and there was still quite a bit of resistance there to watching stuff online. It was, oh, no, we don't do that. Yeah. You send us a VHS, one of those really, because everyone's got VHS machines, but not everyone's got great internet connections. It's really bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you have to package up this big thing and post it. And we sent it to Channel 4. And being early days of the internet, the guy wrote back. He would write back sort of 2-line letters. Seems interesting, got any more? Yes, okay. And then we go back, send him stuff and eventually he called us in for a meeting. And he said, I like your show. And we went, no, thanks anyway. We'll go. He went, no, I like it. He said, yeah, give me 26 of these and we'll see how it goes. The advantage then was Channel 4 had an experimental nighttime strand. It's called 4 Nighttime. It had its own commissioning editor, and this commissioning editor had their own budget. And they were able to take risks on slightly weirder stuff. So it would be after 11 o'clock through to the early hours. They didn't bother then. I probably still don't. You don't get audience ratings outside after the peak times. They don't bother.
Yeah.
So it was no risk to them. And how wonderful is that? It was like an experimental... The guys who wrote Father Ted had already used that late night slot to try various bits out. Had wonderful shows called Karaoke Fish Tank and all sorts of bizarre stuff that would go on late at night. And so we got to be part of that. So it really, really was very low budget. So we literally made it with string and sellotape. There was a lot of strings and gaffer tape. I don't know if you want to. Gaffer tape is this particularly strong adhesive tape that holds sets and sometimes actors together for you to get through. And it was just a grind. We'd be in an audio suite recording the screen script with the actors.
Yeah.
Being heckled by the camera, isn't So we'd have someone in an audio suite, we'd record the voices. Then at the same time, we might have the puppeteers on the floor performing one of the episodes from earlier. And then one of us would have to go into the post to start on the mixing at the same time.
Wow.
So we didn't go home very much.
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy. And then we'd have to be filling in all the paperwork, paying everybody, running the company, as well as running the production.
Oh, okay.
So it was a baptism of fire.
What about the creative freedom that you guys had after getting the show off the ground? Were
Well,
there limitations?
At the time, no. Channel 4 said very little. They, when they fed back, they only had one or two suggestions of bits that they wanted, because they kind of liked the vision we had. Because it was essentially a captive sitcom. It's a very simple. There were only 3 main characters, and I think we had some worms. One of them was the 2 dogs and a cat.
Yeah.
There were worms. I don't know if I like the worms a
And
lot,
the
but someone
parrot.
built us the parrot.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, 4.
Real South African guy.
Yeah.
He came in to do a reading, and it was so off the wall, and he misread every single line that I'd written,
really?
which the comedy writer of me was going like this. But we suddenly realised that this delivery was actually probably what might sell it.
Oh, right.
So the parrot lived in its own world, spent most of its time online,
Yeah.
finding out stuff that wasn't terribly helpful. So we used it was a sitcom, essentially, captive sitcom, and the worms were in one of the dog's guts. And that was just something to cut away from, because we had very limited, got a tiny set, not very much, and it all has to be flight of fancy. So everything they ever did, they came back to the same place. So I think we did send them off to Victorian England in one episode, but it looked exactly like their flat now.
Oh, really?
And another one, we sent them through a Stargate, but when they came back, all we did was we just flopped all the shots when we played it out. So we just, so the sofa was on the other side of the room, but we didn't actually change anything. We just changed it.
But it still gave the illusion of seeing somewhere different.
It's so different. Yeah, chair seems to be on the other side of the room. Yeah, that's right. So we had to be super creative, super inventive, on low budget, which is why I get excited about the film school and university model, because you have to be so super creative on a budget of like 500 quid, 5,000, whatever it is. Yeah. And that's what excites me, I think, seeing something come out of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think you'd get a show like that made today?
Would Pets ever get revived?
Well, funny enough, we had a contract. We had to get a lawyer and everything. You have to have contracts, right? The rights reverted back to us, and Channel 4 closed down. They were closing down their nighttime strand, so that commissioning wasn't happening anymore. So we went to the BBC and met a guy there and said, look, we've got ownership of this product. It's already got a following. Can we make it for one of the digital channels? And he more or less said, we will never, ever, ever, ever make a programme like this.
Oh, really?
About a year later,
I think I know what you're going to say.
and winning a BAFTA, was a series called Mongrels.
Yeah.
We made a show about 2 dogs, a cat and a parrot. They made a show about a dog, a fox, and some other kind of cat or animal. Some of the same people were involved.
Oh,
But
really?
we'd been completely cut out of the process.
Wow.
It was a typical... Actually, we got something very similar in development.
So you were definitely first?
We were definitely first. It's all down there. It's all logged on the... and we were so angry, we would have taken action, but you don't take on a big broadcaster unless you've got millions of pounds in legal...
Right.
And say, look, come on, guys, this is a bit unfair. This is very similar to our product, so you have to be very careful what you do. But we were going to make... We tried to do a press for it, a press release, but it just so happened it was the day England were knocked out of the World Cup that year. So no one was interested in the other. There was no other story that day.
Oh, right.
But it was very disappointing, because you think, guys, we used up every ounce of our creativity. We did it for next to nothing.
Yeah.
And you don't even have the courtesy to acknowledge, as a big organisation, you haven't got the courtesy to acknowledge what we've done. Wow. Although we did get a review that said ours was funnier.
Oh, really?
And eventually, a few years later, we did finally get a writer. Because, of course, you don't get reviews, because, again, it's outside the main channel time. But we did actually eventually get a very nice write-up in The Guardian, saying how hilariously funny and bizarre and weird the characters were. Yeah. And that made us feel good. But it didn't get us anywhere again in terms of commissioning. Oh, okay. You were suddenly sort of unceremoniously, you're out. We sold the characters to MTV for a while.
Oh, really?
They released a single in Italy with a big Italian rap artist called Frankie High Energy. You can look him up. It's called Rap Lamento. soared up the Italian charts.
Wow.
And also our puppets actually did some presenting at the MTV Italy Awards.
Wow.
So they really went for it there.
Yeah.
Wow.
But, you know, again, we didn't have that follow-through luck. We weren't
Yeah.
able to... And my Italian's probably not good enough to... You know.
Well, you did have like quite a significant like cult audience, don't you? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there was like demand for the DVD or whatever.
Yeah, people were... But, well, we couldn't sell the DVD, so in the end, just people were just downloading
Oh, really?
their episodes because they just thought it was fun and they quite liked it, and it had that weird...
Yeah.
It really... I mean, when I look at them now, a few of them I'm still quite proud of. There's some of them I
Yeah.
look and I think, we did it in such a hurry. But it was exciting.
Yeah.
It was funny at the time, and we thought, yeah, that's great. And since that time, you know, loads of people like things like Team America, things like, as I say, that BBC series, you know, people do try and bring it back. But it's no good bringing back puppets. Puppets aren't funny.
Oh, right.
What's funny is
Yeah.
what's behind them if they're real.
Exactly.
So we always treated our puppets as humans. They're us shouting against the world.
Yeah. They definitely, it does come across that way. Yeah. I like it.
There's too much bad language, I would say that. That's why I said we couldn't say it to America because you use those words too often.
Yeah.
We had to fill in forms for those.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't say well. They're colloquially known as use of bad language type forms, but there is a shorthand for what they called the forms. And you have to go through and you have to write down every instance in which an obscenity is uttered, and you have to give the reasoning for it, and it then goes via legal for them to see whether or not that's all right to broadcast.
Oh, wow.
Permission to broadcast, yeah.
I knew America was tight with its swearing on TV, but I didn't realise it was to that point.
Well, this was kind of before, we were too early for things like cable, the sort of specific cable. It was mainly public broadcasting.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So how come the big, like, Italy, like, so was there a lot of Italian people that watched the show then? 'Cause
We don't quite know what happened. We just know that some Italian people liked the product and they thought it would fit in well with their brand at that time. Because when you cross over from film and TV into actually product and branding of a channel and things like that, it's a slightly different spin. They just needed something different from their competitors for that season. So it was only going to have a short shelf life.
Yeah.
But they bought the programs, they dubbed the programs into Italian, and then they made their own videos and other things as well. So
Yeah.
we licensed the characters to them.
Interesting. So after Pets, what happened? What did you do then?
After Pets, it was back to a lot of freelance producing and writing, and then an increasing amount of corporate work. So I worked a lot on commercials. I worked with a company that did big commercials, and I would be working on refining their briefs. I used to do pitches and launches for wannabe TV channels and all sorts of things like that. I worked for Disney for a while, coming up with ideas for selling certain cartoons within the brand. So it was all creative stuff.
Yeah.
So again, it was still writing, producing, and just working on productions and campaigns. So I suddenly had a portfolio lifestyle.
Okay.
And then the great crash of 2007, where everybody freelance found themselves in kind of dire straits because all the big companies cut back on all their staffing, on everything else, and it became a very, for all sorts of creators, painters, sculptors, artists, directors, producers, it became quite a scary time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So what happened after that? Then you went into university teaching?
Well, I've always taught. I've always
Yeah.
been fascinated by teaching, so I always used to teach things like drama and writing, and I've done this for years. And I also, going back to my first degree, remember I told you about that medieval English history and landscape archaeology? I got a little bit excited. I used to teach Roman history for a local museum service in Hertfordshire.
Oh, right.
Although this was different. This was to Key Stage 1 and 2.
Okay.
So they'd all come in like this, come into the museum, they go, smells funny in here, and by the way, history is boring. And I'd go, yes, yes it is, yes. And then I would spend the next hour or so trying to, make it even more boring for them.
Or convince them otherwise.
Yeah, you know. Well, we have all these Roman artefacts. It was brilliant. So you bring out all these original... I mean, can you imagine? We've got all this stuff that you can actually touch. That's actually 2,000 years old. You know, nowhere else can you
Not
do this.
many
So we
museums
bring
or
all this
places
stuff
do
out.
that kind of thing.
And to let a load of 7-year-olds play with it as well.
Yeah.
Chuck it at each other. Take that. Here's a mosaic. So that was hours of fun. So yeah, we used to have battles and get Celts fighting the Romans and all that kind of thing. And so I've always taught alongside. And then this opportunity, someone said, oh, there's a visiting lecturer gig going at university.
Yeah.
And I thought, a chance to mess with young people's heads and make them do all the things I've done. What could be better? And that's what led to this career in teaching, which has been brilliant. Because it is, you know, I get to help other people be creative as well.
Yeah. So that's like is that what's going on for the future then, or have you got anything?
I did, I do try and keep up with professional practice. I had a very small part in a film last year. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Oh, I think I know.
Because I couldn't even see myself in it. I didn't tell anybody because I knew the way they were shooting it, right? It was a setup where they're making a movie, but this scene takes place in a TV studio. I had no chance. There were so many cameras, but so many people in between me and the camera. I just thought, no, I'm not going to get seen in this. So I did everything I could, you know, try and shout my lines around the corner like that. But no, I like to do the odd occasional job just so I can see what's happening on the floor. Yeah. Are they still using the same cameras? And like I discovered last year, yeah, mini Ursas, they're using exactly the same things that we're using here.
Oh, really?
It's really interesting.
Wow.
So I like to go back and do the odd occasional thing just to see what people are doing. But do I want to go back to really early mornings away from the family? I'm not sure that I do at the moment.
Yeah, because I guess the timings of like that kind of lifestyle.
Because I ended up having my life-changing events.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I came to children a bit late in life, you know. I didn't have the manual, and I've been enjoying that side of it. But yeah, if you want to give me my own series on Channel 4, I'll think about it.
Definitely.
Don't know what I do though. Probably what I do now. Oh God, no one would watch. Anyway.
I did some research and I just thought I'll ask you this just for fun. So is it true you've worked with Judi Dench and Jeffrey Palmer?
Yes, it is. I was in an episode of As Time Goes By. Yeah. It was a 90s sitcom for elderly people, I think. It was a kind of gentle will they, won't they. It was about two people in love, second time around. Now that's pretty exciting, being in the same room watching. Yeah. I mean, Judi Dench was already very famous then, but she hadn't quite reached national treasure status. So, you know, we didn't have to be, you know, she was just like, that's Judi over there, yeah. Show his pal. I don't think she spoke to me that much. I think she said, hello, good night, and no thank you when I offered her a cup of tea. But no, she was nice. No, she and Jeffrey Palmer were very funny. And that was in the days that they had a big budget. And they said, how do you see this character, Andrew? I said, he's got a massive ponytail. I said it as a joke. Photographer, and they went, okay. Got whisked off to the BBC massive wardrobe department, and they fitted me a ponytail that hurt so much. I was like that the whole day. It was pulling all my skin back, and I hurt the whole day like this. But that's when they had big budgets. It was great. You could get the costume you wanted, and you could investigate and do all sorts of exciting things. But yeah, Judi Dench, that was pretty cool. And
what's she like compared to other people that you've worked with?
Oh, she's absolutely charming. Really, really charming. Very professional. I think when people get to the top, they tend to be very professional. So, you know, they're very welcoming and they make you feel part of it. Although the weirdest job I did, there was a very popular 70s sitcom called Are You Being Served? Which was absolutely huge. And it then had a spin-off in the 90s, and I appeared in that as well, called Grace and Favour. And working with those guys, they'd all been like in show business, some of them since the Second World War. Oh, really? So I spent most of my time trying to get them to tell me stories, because I love all that kind of thing, sort of finding out who they knew, who they worked with, and all those different things. So one of the exciting things on that side of it, it's definitely learning more about what people have done and what they've been in.
Because obviously that leads to like other opportunities anyway, doesn't it? Like just networking.
You think so? But again, I think you have to have an enormous amount of personal energy to just go out there and want it. Yeah. And anybody studying at university, if you really want it, I can honestly say it will happen. Yeah. If you want it enough, it will happen.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. That is very encouraging. Yeah. I just want to get my radio mic out and just film stuff.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I am proof that you can. You know, my whole career has been made out of me deciding I want to do this. Yeah. And everyone will complain about money at some point. Right? Everyone will say, yeah, it would have been great if I could have earned £1 billion, trillion, zillion pounds. But really, you know, people ask me if I've got any regrets for what I've done. I absolutely haven't. I have enjoyed, by and large, everything. Since I left the bank, I have enjoyed everything.
It's just your path.
It's interesting you say that, because I was going to ask, on the other end of the spectrum from Judi Dench, do you have any horror stories from working on any projects or anything?
The horror stories are usually when there's no money or people have lied to you about where you're supposed to be or what you're doing. I can't name names and it's not on IMDb, so it doesn't matter, but I did once work in a theatre company with a very big TV star who was awful. He's dead now, so it probably doesn't matter about it. Horrible, no, he's a horrible man who used to shout and swear at you. And this was very early in my career. I had a small part, and I was also what's called an assistant stage manager. So you had to be responsible for the props. That's what an ASM does. Purely props. You have to make sure everything's in the right place and all this. And this guy complained and moaned so much that I used to do horrible things to his props. So they wouldn't work as well as he wanted. He had this drawer that he had to pull out, and that was always a bit sticky for him. It was a bit, I can't get it come out. Anyway, he'd always shout at me afterwards, I can't understand it. I've been putting graphite on it, I've sanded it down, I don't get it. And the next night, just a little bit more wood glue in there, just to make it difficult. So you do, but it's very rare that you meet really unpleasant people. You do meet some people who try and, I've been shafted over money. That has happened. You do get people who are perhaps as not plain dealing as they should be, but you learn to look out for that. But by and large, you will attract other people who are like-minded.
Exactly.
And I think it's being, hoping that you'll help each other out is kind of what you want. But yes, you do get the strange people. I mean, the worst thing from the early days, as an actor, is probably changing in public toilets and changing in the most awful places, to go and put on a performance, or in a little French theatre where there's a toilet with no lock, or you come to a little French theatre with a sick all over the floor on the way out that no one's kidding. You're like, okay, the audience can get past that. So there are things related to budget that are definitely a problem. But yeah. That's why I was quite glad to move on from that.
What's your biggest advice for us as students then? Because obviously we've got access to...
Biggest advice? Embrace your vision.
Embrace the vision.
Believe that you're going to do it.
Okay.
If you say that you want to be working on a Marvel-style film in the future, visualise it and then plan it. Ask, as what? Whatever you do, you can plan it. If you say, I want to be eventually a director, working on big budget Hollywood, okay, you have to understand that there are these particular obstacles in that way. The first of which is you live in the UK, and you're not part of the Hollywood. So what are you going to do about it? That's just a case of doing your research into airfares, green cards, permissions to work. All of a sudden you could be working in California. All of a sudden you could be doing your best to knock on the door and show these people that you've got this and you've got that. If your ambition is to work in a camera department, you can be doing that within a year of leaving university. But you've got to do, it's again, purely to do with hard work. Yes, you've got to have self-belief, but two, you've got to do the research. That's what we teach you here, research and inquiry. Find out who to talk to, find out who to bug, work out how to contact them, work out what they like, what can you show them, what can you send this month, what can I send next week. It's exhausting. But what else have you got to do when you're in your early 20s? You've got all that energy.
Exactly.
When you get to 29, 30, you'll get a lot more tired. Like going upstairs is a bit tiring, to be honest with you. But my advice is have the vision and do the work. Put those two things together and you will be where you want to be.
Wow.
I truly, truly believe that.
Cool.
That's what everyone says, so it has to be true. Everyone really does.
It is, but I work with great people, all of whom seem to be very pleased with what they're doing. No time for regrets. If something goes wrong, ignore it, move forward. Don't dwell on what you can't do, only think about what you can do. And just find those, look after yourself. A bit of self-love is no bad thing. You've got to make sure you eat properly. That sounds stupid. I'm your mother. You've got to eat properly. You've got to look after yourself. You've got to get sleep. As long as you do that, your health and your energy will take you an awfully long way.
Wow. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on our show.
Well, thank you for inviting me and
You're
letting me...
going to ask him the final question?
You can ask me the
What's the
final
final
question.
You never come on.
Oh, yeah. So overall, would you say your career... I mean, we kind of touched on it, but
just
was
to end
mostly who you know or what you know? Just like...
For me, the balance was what I learned, what I knew. So for me, it is definitely a case of make your own groove.
I like that.
And I hope that helps.
Manifest destiny sort of thing.
Manifest destiny, absolutely. Written in the stars.
Love that. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Great
much.
having you.